Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you my latest Vanguard Portfolio update. I'm going to be sharing all the funds that I invest in both my stocks and shares ISA and my SIPP, and the total percentage changes over the last couple of months. At the end of the video I'm going to give you my total return since inception, which is definitely worth hanging on for. First of all, please let me introduce myself. My name's Gary. I run this channel Free Your Finance, where I talk about investing, property and the journey towards financial independence. If retiring early is an interest for you, then maybe consider subscribing to this channel. So first of all, a quick question for you guys. Do you invest in index funds? And if so, what is your favourite? I'm looking forward to reading your comments down below. I've now been sharing my monthly Vanguard portfolio update for quite a while, and I really enjoy sharing it with you month by month, and we can see together how my portfolio is performing. For any of you that have not seen one of my updates before, you'll know that I'm a big fan of pound cost averaging. This is because I pay into my Vanguard account when I get paid from my company. I've also recently started investing into a SIPP, which is a self-invested personal pension. This is something that Vanguard bought in a few months back, and all of my investments are in equity funds. Now, of course, this is very risky, and as much as I can have very good high points, I also get quite bad low points too. Portfolios made up of 100% stocks like mine are definitely much more volatile, and that brings me perfectly on to saying this is not financial advice. This is me simply sharing my portfolio, which suits my needs and the correct risk to reward ratio for me. Before I get started with my first fund, I must just tell you that the inception date of this portfolio was September 2019. Of course, I've put money into different funds at different times, so not all funds have been held since then, but it just gives you an idea of how long the portfolio has been open for. So let's now head over onto the laptop and see which funds I invest in. So first of all, we're going to go through the funds in my stocks and shares ISA. Now, the first fund I hold in my ISA portfolio is the Emerging Markets Stock Index Fund. Last month, this made up 1.71% of my total ISA portfolio. Also, last month it made me a fantastic 9.68%, which is an amazing return over just a month. This past month, January to February, the weight has gone down slightly due to the fact of me putting more money into a different fund. The weight is now 1.59%. You'll see that I'm 0.77% up this month, which gives me a total rate of return since inception of 28.15%. The next fund I hold in my ISA portfolio is the FTSE All World High Dividend Yield. The ticker symbol for this one is VHYL. Last month it made up 6.75% of my ISA portfolio. It returned 4.33%, which I was very happy with, as before that the fund had been struggling. This month the weight has gone down slightly to 6.14%. Unfortunately, it's my first loss on this month's update. I've made a loss of 1.36% in the last month. However, the good news is the total rate of return since inception is 2.73% for this fund. Next up is the S&P 500 ETF, ticker symbol VUSA. The weight of this fund in my portfolio last month was 41.51%. In last month's update, it made me 1.86%. This month you will see the weight has increased as I actually chose to invest my money into VUSA this month. It now makes up 45.73% of my total ISA portfolio. This month it made me 1.19%, which gave me a total rate of return since inception of 21.52%. Next up is the FTSE All World ETF, ticker symbol VWRL. I very recently made a video all about this fund. If you'd like to go and check that out, I'll put a link up in the top corner of this video. As you can see, in last month's update, this fund made up 49.11% of my total ISA portfolio. In last month's update, I reported back to you guys that it made me 2.94%. In this month's update, the weight of VWRL has now dropped. It is now 45.67%, and this was due to what I said earlier, that I put my money in VUSA this month. Over the last month, it's made me 0.73%, which gives me a total rate of return of a fantastic 36.99%. Now, I must just quickly add that this is partly luck, as I actually put in quite a large sum of money into VWRL on pretty much the lowest day when the markets dropped back in March. Of course, this was more luck than judgment, and you can't time the markets, but you can see just how well this fund is doing. And then the final fund that I hold in my ISA portfolio is the ESG Developed World All Cap Equity Index Fund. And this fund is an accumulating fund, which means it automatically reinvests any dividends for us. In last month's update, it made up 0.93% of my total ISA portfolio, and last month it made me an impressive 3.03%. In this month's update, as expected, the weight has indeed dropped. The total weight is now 0.86%. Over the last month, it's made me 0.41%, and that gives me a total rate of return of 6.79% since inception. This is the newest fund that I've added to my ISA portfolio, and it's already beating the high dividend yield paying fund, which has been performing awfully since the drops back in March. Next up, we're going to move over onto my SIPP. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, SIPP is self-invested personal pension. Now, I invest straight into my SIPP from my company. There's big advantages of doing this, including savings on corporation tax. However, I would highly recommend you speak to an accountant if you also run your own company. The first fund that I hold in my SIPP is again the ESG Developed World All Cap Equity Index Fund. Last month, it made up 60.86% of my total SIPP portfolio. Last month, it made me 2.73%. In this month's update, you will see a massive change. The weight has jumped hugely, now to 96.54%. This was down to the fact that I put in a very large payment from my company that my company owed me, and I decided to invest it in my pension for my future. So over the last month, this fund has now made me my second loss, this time totaling 0.81%. However, the good news is it's still in the green since inception with a total rate of return of 0.5%. And then before I share the most exciting bits, the total rates of returns since inception for the whole portfolio, the final fund that I invest in is the Life Strategy 100%. Last month, it made up 39.14% of my total SIPP portfolio, and in last month's update, it made me 3.53%. Now, as I'm sure you're expecting, of course, the weight has been massively reduced down to just 3.46% of my total SIPP portfolio. It's not made the most amazing return, but at least it's in the green. It's made me 0.09%, and the total rate of return since inception for this one fund is 14.41%. So finally, I'm going to move on to the total rate of return for the portfolio as a whole. In last month's update, the portfolio was up 3%. This month has definitely been a much slower month, and it's up just 0.83%. However, the bit that you've all been waiting for, what has been the total return since I started this portfolio back in September 2019? So my total rate of return is 32.12%, which is incredible. I'm super chuffed with that. For any of you that have watched the channel before, you will actually notice that this is lower than last month's update, but I'm still so chuffed for the portfolio to be performing so well. Now, one more question for you guys. If you invest in index funds, what is your stock to bond allocation? I'm really excited to read your comments on this below, and apart from that, I hope to see you on the channel very soon. Take care, guys.